Welcome back, everybody. I'm going to start introducing Cheri, reading her bio. Cheri Mills, Business Banking Officer at PeoplesBank. Cheri is a business banking officer at PeoplesBank and has worked in banking for 32 years. She began her career in 1988 as a mail runner, working up to banking center manager in 1997, and eventually discovered a love of business banking. Cheri participated in a management trainee program, completing Moody's Analytics and Omega Financial Analysis. She takes pride in assisting business owners in achieving their financial goals. She's currently the president of the Rotary Club of Chicopee, treasurer of Junior Achievement of Western Massachusetts, and a board member with the Minority Business Council of Springfield. Cheri, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So first question would be, can you share a little bit, I just read a little bit about your career path, but could you share us a little insight into your career path and how you got here today?
Sure. So growing up on a small island, I'm from Guam, there was two ways you could go, is go to college or join the military. And the military scared me at the time, didn't know I could get it passed through basic training. And I had a very big family, so I didn't feel college was an immediate option. So I decided to enter the workforce immediately. And that is when I got an entry-level position into the first bank I worked for, Bank of Guam, as a runner. And that was before computers. So all transactions were done manually. So my job was to take these transactions, balance them and photograph them, keep them in order, and then take them downtown where a mainframe computer would actually process the transactions for the customers. And that was my first insight to banking, and I fell in love with it. And from there, I grew. I became a teller, a bookkeeper, loan clerk, and I decided I wanted to stay in that and become a manager one day, which 9 years later, I entered into the Retail Leadership Development Program, where it was a 9-month program, and you had to interview to enter. There were 150 candidates, and I was one of 30 that was chosen. So I was very proud and happy to be part of that program. And at the end of the leadership program, which I was exposed to all areas of banking and leadership and being a manager, shortly after graduating from that program, I obtained my first branch manager position. And I was a branch manager for, I want to say, almost 20 years in various roles. And that, even as a manager, my role, there were different promotions within that job, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. And then it led me to business banking. Because the manager job evolved to include business banking, I decided that I wanted to focus on that. And so a few years ago in 2017, I was lucky enough to obtain a job that just focused on being a business banking officer. And that's what I do today. And I absolutely love it. I don't manage people anymore, but I manage my day. I do work as part of a team, and I get to be out there in the field and talking with business owners and businesses every day, and I love it.
That's so great. Now, to get to that point in your career, I'm sure you've had a few success habits that you've had and implemented in your everyday life. Could you kind of go through some of those and share with us some of those?
And some of those habits were learned on the job through making mistakes of my own. And I know I'll get into that a little bit later, but one of the things I learned was to be early for work. Don't necessarily be, start the job at 8:30, arrive a bit early. And also don't be the first one to leave. Take pride in the job that you're doing and not necessarily be managed by the clockers when you clock in and when you clock out. Be flexible, step out of my comfort zone, help my team in any way that I can, whatever strengths I can bring to it. Help the team reach the project time or tackle a challenge. And then it is, even if you don't have a leadership role, lead by example. And by doing so, I've been able to achieve the promotions that I look forward to or wanted along the way in my career.
That's awesome. I know you did mention that, we're all not perfect beings and there's times where we make mistakes. Is there some mistakes that you've made over your careers that you've been able to learn from or look back and look at that they've been able to help your career in some way?
Yes, and you know, it also, these mistakes shaped me as into the manager that I became, and that I grew into in those almost 20 years that I was a manager. But there was when I first started my career in banking, there was a 18-month period where I made every mistake possible, and they were as little as, and it wasn't little, but I thought they were little at the time, as I was always 2 minutes late for work, and I couldn't get there on time. And it took getting an oral warning to wake up and hold myself accountable for that. But then those little mistakes then evolved into bigger mistakes. And one of the biggest mistakes I made in banking was I was all about speed and not about quality. And as a result, I took in a deposit that was improperly endorsed. And it ended up costing the bank a large sum of loss, large dollar loss as a result. And I learned how to take accountability for that, and then how to earn back the trust. And thankfully, through my development and things that I did in the past, this company chose, they could have fired me, but they said, you know, we see something in the dedication. She's really putting in an effort. Let's give her a probationary period. And they did. And I worked really hard to earn back the trust, and learned how to slow down my work, and learned what it meant to, you know, come early. Why I was rushing through things is because I was always getting there just in the nick of time. So those little things can lead to larger mistakes. And sometimes the mistakes are not necessarily cost you any, like that large dollar amount didn't cost me that amount, but it cost me some credibility in doing my job well. And I had to earn that back. And that was one of the biggest challenges in early on in my career that still to this day I share, even with when I was managing people, when I have to address things that they need to be accountable for, or I have to hold them accountable. I let them know that we're all human, but there is a way through this mistake, and a way to come out being a better person, an associate, an employee, or a teammate.
Absolutely. Yeah. Couldn't agree more on that one. So with that being said, you know, you've managed people in the past, you haven't managed people currently, or you're not managing people currently. What are some of your biggest attributes, or feel those most important parts of being a good leader?
You know, one of the things that I pride myself on was leading by example. So, you know, I would not ask one of my associates to do something that I wasn't willing to do myself. Also, I feel it's really important, and I made sure to make this part of my everyday regimen, but was to be a role model. You know, act the way that you want your team to act, and how you wanted them to approach their duties, because you're always being watched by your team, and they will mimic you. So one of the best ways to silently guide your team and lead your team is to set the example and be a role model.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. What do you think some of the challenges are going to be for this next generation heading into their professional careers?
Yes. Okay. So I want to focus this around the work, because there are so many challenges, I think. I'm sure you've heard this before, but COVID-19 in itself has presented a lot of challenges already, and is forcing us to reshape how we work. I myself, I work remotely now, where I used to work in an office, and then I went out into the communities. And so I've had to change a little bit of that. So as you move into the workplace and start to find jobs that you are passionate about, you may find that the initial job you wanted may not be the one that you get right away. And so adapting and changing your goals, or adapting your plans would be one challenge. And the other is technology, staying on top of technology, because it's changing sometimes faster than we can keep up.
Absolutely. That is for sure. So Cheri, if you can go back, it's only a couple of years for you, but what advice would you give yourself at 16?
That's a great question, and I've been asked it many times. And one of the things is that I would not be in such a hurry to be so independent. I wanted to get my life started right away, and I didn't take the time to research on my own certain things that were of interest to me. I kind of just said, okay, these are my only choices. And I was 16, and I wanted to be on my own at 18. And so I didn't give myself the time to actually look into different options that I had. I just chose to go to work. And even then, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I find I am very lucky in that I found a job after, it wasn't my first job, but I found a job that I fell in love with and that I knew that I wanted to be part of as a long lasting career. And that doesn't necessarily happen for everybody. So 16-year-old Cheri, I would say, step back, look at your options. Why is college not attainable for you? And look at the different aspects. Maybe it's something I want to do and I go to. I went to school. I don't have a degree, but I went to school and got different certifications all along the way. And I found it to be very challenging, especially as I continued to grow. I got married and started a family. So at 16 years old, take your time. Don't be in a hurry to be so independent, um, and enjoy the journey.
I think that's some great advice. Do we have any questions from any of the classes out there? You can put them in the chat or come up to the camera and ask them yourself. Cheri, is there anything that you'd want to leave the students with today in regards to, importance to you and what you feel as though it should be a good takeaway from them?
Yes, and I have a college age son, and he's going to school, and I've always one thing I tell him, and I'd like to leave here today, is follow your instincts and what you want to do in terms of a career path, but be open to the experiences that you will learn along the way. And it's okay if your journey takes you in a different direction than you originally planned. But no matter what, put in the effort. Put in the effort to learn, to grow, be accountable for your actions, and understand that whatever decision you make, it's a decision that you have to be happy with. It doesn't matter if it's not a career path that I wanted to take. If this is what's going to make you happy, then it's something that you should do. But own that decision and don't make it the fault of anyone else.
Absolutely. Any questions out there? Don't all ask at once. I know it's be tough getting through sometimes on these Zoom calls. But Cheri, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your insight on that. And really, really appreciate it. With that being said, I think we are good to go then.